it's me Radia. Welcome back to May Adventures. Today I'd like to read you a book called Frog's Breathtaking Speech, written by Michael Chiswick, illustrated by Sarah Peacock. What do you think we will learn? What do you think we'll be reading about? Write in the comments below. One warm, sunny afternoon, the frog sat by the river's edge, looking very, 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 very sad. Along came his friend Crocodile. When Crocodile looked at Frog's face, he asked, "Why so sad, Frog?" Frog replied, "I'll tell you why I'm so sad." "Why do you think he'll be sad?" "Tomorrow morning at Frog's school, I have to make a speech about breathing. I don't know much about breathing. I am very, 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 very scared." "But do you think he can do this?" "Of course he can. Let's see." Crocodile listened carefully, smiled, and said, "I know an interesting way to breathe. This is what I do. I breathe in through my nose, then I breathe out through my nose." Frog, I would say that this is a very interesting way to breathe, because when you breathe slowly and carefully in and out of your nose, it calms you down. Which means if you are worried, anxious, or even frightened about something, this way of breathing will help you deal with it better. I am very proud of this way of breathing. I call it the crocodile breath. "I see," said Frog. "That is an interesting way to breathe. I think I'll make a note about it in my notepad." "Thank you, Crocodile," said Frog. "You are welcome," replied Crocodile as they slid down the river. Frog finished his nose and continued to sit by the river's edge, looking sad. Although not quite as sad as he had been. Along came his friend Lion. When Lion looked at Frog's face, he asked, "Why so sad, Frog?" Frog replied, "I'll tell you why I'm so sad. Tomorrow morning at Frog's school, I have to make a speech about breathing. I don't know much about breathing, and I am very, very, very scared. Will you be able to do it in the end?" Lion listened carefully, smiled, and said, "I know an interesting way to breathe. This is what I do. I breathe in through my nose, then I roll out through my mouth like this." And with that, he stretched apart each of his jaws, raised his eyebrows, opened his jaw as wide as he could, stuck out his long pink tongue as far as it would go, and let out the most enormous roar you have ever heard. That probably would be very loud. Frog, I would say that this is a very interesting way to breathe, because when you roar your breath out like that, it helps to loosen your jaw, especially if your jaw has been feeling tense or tight. Also, if you practice this breath, your voice will become stronger and louder. This is good news because said Frog. That is a very interesting way to breathe. I think I will make a note about it in my notepad. Thank you, Lion. You are welcome, replied the lion, and he slinked off into the meadow. What do you think he's going to do? Frog finished this note and continued to sit by the river's edge, looking sad, although not quite as sad as before. Along came his friend Hummingbee. When Hummingbee looked at Frog's face, he asked, "Why so sad, Frog?" Frog replied, "I'll tell you why I'm so sad. Tomorrow morning at Frog School, I have to make a speech about breathing. I don't know much about breathing and I am very, very scared." Hummingbee listened carefully, smiled, and said, "I know an interesting way to breathe. This is what I do. I breathe in through my nose, then I hum the breath out of my mouth like this." And with that, he expanded his chest like a balloon as he breathed in through his nose. Effortlessly, he began to hum as he breathed out through his mouth. If I run out of breath, I just start again. With that, he expanded his chest again. And as he breathed out, he hummed even louder and longer than before. Frog, I would say that this is a very interesting way to breathe, hummed the Hummingbee. Because when you hum, it helps headaches go away. If you don't have a headache, humming is a fun thing to do. I am very proud of this way of breathing. I call it the Hummingbee breath. "I see," said Frog. "That is an interesting way to breathe. I will make a note about it in my notepad. Thank you, Hummingbee." "You are welcome," replied the Hummingbee, and he buzzed off to the poppy field. Frog finished his notes and continued to sit by the river's edge, looking sad, although a lot less sad than before. Along came his friend Mr. Gumble the woodchopper. When Mr. Gumble looked at Frog's face, he asked, "Why so sad, Frog?" Frog replied, "I'll tell you why I'm so sad. Tomorrow morning at Frog School, I have to make a speech about breathing. I don't know much about breathing and I am very scared." Mr. Gumble listened carefully, smiled, and said, "I know an interesting way to breathe. This is what I do. I stand straight with my feet apart. Then I raise my axe over my head, keeping my arms straight. As I raise my axe over my head, I take a deep breath in through my nose. Then as I bring my axe down towards the space between my feet, I cry out, 'Ha!' as fiercely as I can." And with that, he raised his axe over his head, breathing in through his nose. Then he brought his axe down towards the space between his feet, crying out, "Ha!" with all his might. Frog, I would say that this is a very interesting way to breathe, said Mr. Gumble, especially if you're angry. This is because when you use the ha breath, any anger that is trapped inside of you is allowed to escape. When your anger has escaped, you feel calm and happy again. I am very proud of this way of breathing. I call it the woodchopper breath. I see, said Frog. That is an interesting way to breathe. I will make a note about it in my notepad. Thank you, Mr. Gumble. You are welcome, replied Mr. Gumble, and he trudged off to the forest. Frog gathered his notes and hopped home as fast as his green legs could carry him. He went straight to his room, sat at his desk, and, using the notes, carefully wrote the speech. It was a challenge for him, but soon he had completed the work. Next morning, he woke up, dressed quickly in his best frog school uniform, and hopped off to school. As he stood by the door that led into the hall, he peered through the glass. There in the hall, waiting to hear speech, were 300 frog school children. That's quite a lot. Frog felt more than nervous. Frog felt more than anxious. He felt more than worried. He was so scared. His hands were clammy and he could feel butterflies in his tummy. Oh dear, he wondered, will I be able to talk? What shall I do to calm myself, he asked himself. Shall I do the lion breath or shall I do the humming breath? Maybe the winter breath, perhaps the crocodile breath. Frog made his decision. I will choose the crocodile breath, he thought. That's the one to settle me. He stood outside the hall, slowly and carefully, breathing in and out of his nose for a full 5 minutes. When at last he felt calm enough, he strode into the hall confidently. The place fell silent as the 300 frog children stared at him, waiting. Frog cleared his throat and began his speech. At that moment, all anxiety seemed to disappear. He felt brave enough to look at his audience and only needed to glance at his notes once or twice. Gosh, he thought to himself, more than a little surprised. They look as if they are enjoying this, as indeed they were. The hall was stunningly silent. No one moved, no one hopped, no one spoke, no one fidgeted. You could hear a pin drop, except of course, for the sound of Frog's voice. And that is why I think breathing is an interesting subject. Thank you for listening, Frog said, finishing his speech. Suddenly, explosion of clapping filled the hall. As the clapping gradually faded, the head frog teacher hopped to the front of the hall and spoke. Frog, you have made a wonderful speech today. We could hear every word. It was enjoyable and interesting, and you have told us amazing things about breathing that will help us have better lives. It is an honor to represent you with this certificate. Frog looked proudly at the golden certificate in his webbed hands. It read, Frog's Breathtaking Speech. He thought for a moment how he had changed his sadness to happiness. He felt strong inside, knowing that if problems came his way, he could at least solve some of them by using his breath. The end. Hope you've enjoyed this story. Keep reading, and if you want to do any of the breathing techniques, you are free to. Check out my page on Instagram. Keep reading. Bye.